Okay, so once you have your 3D object designed, you're going to need to import it into something called a slicer. And there are a bunch of different programs that we can use, but a slicer is basically um, just going to layer by layer, it's going to tell the printer how to print this object up. So I'm in Simplify 3D. It's not a free program. We have it loaded on several computers though. It is a great program. There are free ones like Cura, C-U-R-A. You can just download and use that, but this one's a little bit more powerful. So let's just go ahead and we'll import an object. We'll start with the cookie cutter, and it just falls right in on the platform of the printer, and we can start selecting our settings or tweaking this as need be. Really quick, if I double click on this, I open up this menu that can allow me to change the position, change the size, rotate the object if I need to. But it actually came in perfectly. And the reason I say that is because if you look at this as it builds layer by layer from the platforms building up, each layer is going to be built on something that's already underneath it. In other words, there are no overhangs. They will be printed in midair. That's a problem if there are. It's not that necessarily that big of a problem, but if we can avoid it, we want to avoid it. We can always go in and add support if we need to. But in this case, this is perfect. So we're going to go to Edit Process Settings. Now, the really important thing is that we make sure, and we want to double and triple check this, that we have the right printer selected. So typically, we'll print on one of two printers, the TAS6, the Lulzbot TAS6, or the Ultimaker sometimes, the Airwolf sometimes, but really mainly it's the Lulzbot TAS6. So we want to make sure that we have that selected. If I told it was the wrong printer and I printed it on this one instead, it could actually break the printer. So that's really important. Then the material that I'm using, usually PLA or ABS, that's also really important because those have different melting temperatures, and it could completely throw off the quality of your print if you tell it the wrong thing. We usually use PLA. It's easy to print with, easier than ABS, but in this case, ABS, because it has a higher melting temperature, it won't warp in the dishwasher when the dishwasher does its heated dry cycle. So for something like this, we'll use the ABS. Then over here I can choose, do I want to do this just a fast print, which is what I do most of the time, or do I want a really high resolution print? The trade-off is just basically time, how long the print takes. Down here, if I need to generate support, I can click on that. In this case, I don't need to. If I need to include a raft, I can click on that. That's basically just a preliminary layer that gets peeled off at the end. That's sort of an intermediate step between, so you don't have to print directly on the build platform. But in this case, it really doesn't matter. We'll only use that in certain circumstances. If I really want to fine tune anything, I can come down here. I can change my layer height. But again, if I choose high resolution, that automatically changes it to a finer layer. I can adjust my things like raft, if I had that, the infill percentage, stuff like that. But most of this stuff we don't really need to tweak. The main one that I would ever adjust is temperature. And you can change the temperature of the bed of the printer or of the nozzle. That comes over here. 260 for ABS is actually high. That's surprisingly high. So I'm going to adjust that to 245. If we wanted to, we can actually do this layer by layer. We can say after 10 layers, adjust to some other temperature. But I don't need to do that for this. For the most part, we don't actually have to change it. But it is nice to come in and tweak the temperature sometimes if you need to. So the extruder temperature is really the only thing that you'll probably have to adjust. The other thing that you might adjust sometimes is the printer speed. But again, that's usually pretty good. Adjusting the temperature can usually take care of most issues that you run into. And yeah, that's about it. So let's say that this is good. We can then go click on Prepare to Print. And you're going to be able to see, again, if I slide through this, I can see layer by layer how this is being built up. And again, it's easy to see that each layer goes on top of something that's already existing, which is good. Up here, it's going to tell me how long the print will take, how much material I'll use, stuff like that. This looks good. So we'll go ahead and we can click down here, save to the SD card. So the SD card just comes right out of the side of the printer. In the case of the Lulzbot TAS 6, and you click on that, you can then save it to that SD card directly, pop it out of your computer, put it back in the printer, and you're off and printing.